Welcome to the Room to Bloom podcast, equipping you to live redefined, renewed, and restored. I'm your host, Julie Rebboah. Let's tackle this week's topic. Welcome to another episode of the Room to Bloom podcast. Today I have a special guest named John James Santangelo, PhD, and we're going to talk about creating a compelling future. He is a results coach, an author, a speaker, and an NLP trainer, and I will let him explain to you what that is. So welcome.
Welcome, Julie.
I'm so glad you're here today.
Yeah,
Could you
thank
tell
you.
us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, pretty simple. I'm probably my road to where I am now is probably like most people in life. You come across challenges and you're asking a lot of questions, trying to figure out your place in the moment and also your destination. Where do you want to go? And I asked a lot of questions. Unfortunately, I started hanging out with the wrong crowd when I was I think it was 19 or 20 years old, and I got involved with definitely the wrong people. It seemed fun at the time, but I think now when I look back, it was probably an escape to that's a deep question, to really get away from where I was emotionally. And, we started having a lot of fun, smoking pot and drinking, and I never drank and I never did drugs in high school. And for 2 years, it was just, I was just out of control. And I literally at one point had a bottle of pills in my hand and thought, man, what am I doing? I'm better than this. And I heard my grandfather's voice in my head and said, you know what to do. You know what to do. Now you just got to take that first step and move in that direction. I knew that's where I had to make change. And so from there, obviously, I started asking a lot of questions. And the biggest question I started asking myself was this, which I think a lot of people do too, is what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I found Tony Robbins, and I was really fascinated by the things that he was saying. Like, you can control the mind-body. And if you can control the mind-body, then you can control your destination. And so I started doing a lot of research on it. I went to a Learning Annex class, and the instructor offered a certification program, and I was hooked. I thought, man, this is amazing. Why aren't we teaching this kind of technology in our schools? And then from there, I just started getting my degrees. I went through a master's program. I went through I finished my clinical hypnotherapy program and my PhD with that, psychology. And I think probably the next question you probably ask me is, what do you do with this, right? And being a results coach is really, that's what it is. Now that I have this technology, now that I have the mindset, it's wonderful to share it with people. Because as you know, talking to a lot of people, there's so much pain out. There's so much struggle. And you know what the crazy thing is? Julie, I always ask my clients this: what are the 3 things or problems or issues that we face in life? There's only 3. One is relationships. And we learn that, around 13, 14 years old, and you find out your first relationship that you get into, whether it works or whether it doesn't, you start creating an identity for yourself. The second one, around 20 years old, 21, you start figuring out money. Money has to be an issue in our lives. It doesn't have to be. It usually is because people struggle with it. And the third, which doesn't really come along till later on, maybe you're 40 or 50 years old, is our health. So it's relationships, money, and health. And the crazy thing is not one of those are taught in school. So I started really researching this technology, and really what I came down to this was, how do we use our brain? How do we use our brain for a change, right? And that's really what it is. Everybody has challenges. We all have successes, but how do you go from point A to point B? How do you go from B to C and all the way to Z, which is usually the end of our life, right? What do you want to become? And so for me, the answer to that question was, I became a professional speaker. I wanted to help people. And then I got into the coaching and the counseling part of it, and the rest is history. I've written 8 books now and working on number 9, which is called Control Your Emotions, Master Your Life.
I think we're going to need that book for sure. We can all use some of that wisdom.
Yeah.
So as a results and NLP coach, could you tell us, how do you obtain those results with your clients?
Yeah, it's a simple question. How do people get results? Now, most people have a myriad of different answers, right? But I've distilled it down to 2 components. One is, you need to know exactly what you want. So many people are afraid to verbalize it or even write it down because there's so much garbage in the way, right? So the second piece, the harder component, is learning to get out of your own way, knowing what you want and learn to get out of your own way. If you can figure out those two things, it makes life a whole lot easier and a heck of a lot more fun too, right? Though, unfortunately, a lot of people, here's what they say when I ask them. I say, pretend I'm your travel agent. What's the first question I'm going to ask you?
Where do you want to go?
Where do you want to go? Right? I can't get you there, even if I had a magic wand, unless we both know where we're going.
Right.
Right? And then the vehicle. What's the vehicle? As a metaphor, it could be a car, it could be a skateboard, it could be a plane, it could be a bike, it could be a motorcycle, whatever that is. So the vehicle tends to be, what do you have at your disposal? What are the resources you have, and where are we starting out? And it's a wonderful metaphor because it breaks it down in its simplicity of really what it is. What do you want? And that's always the challenge in the beginning, is to get people out of their stuck state to figuring out what it is they want. Now, we all know what we want. We all know, right? If God came down and sat next to you and he said, son, I can give you anything you want, but you have to just ask. Now, the crazy part is, here's what most people go, what, I don't want to go back into another relationship like that before, or, money just isn't my thing. I struggle with money all the time. And he'll tap you on the shoulder and says, I believe you. Although, what do you want? See, we're great at verbalizing what we don't want because we've already been there. Past is a great predictor of the future a lot of times, and people hold on to the past, unfortunately, and it brings a lot of uncertainty and pain with it. So the first thing you do is really decide what it is that you want, regardless of outside circumstances, what other people think. And you know this as well. We ask people, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about doing this, and they tend to give you negative feedback, right? That's going to be really hard. You've never done that before. You don't have the money to do that, or you don't have the time. You're so busy. So we tend to let other people, that's where the ridicule and the rejection, the self-criticism comes in. We allow that to get inside of our head, and they start growing weeds. We're great at picking weeds. We're not really great at growing something. Fruit, vegetables as a metaphor itself.
So true. That is so true. And so, in your opinion, the biggest block that people typically have that keeps them from reaching their potential and living their best lives is that they're in their own way.
Yeah. Yes. Great way to say it. I mean, you break it down in simple terms like that. The new book I'm writing, the first chapter, is all about awareness, right? You need to know where you are. And that's the challenge with what we do as human condition, the human brain. We don't want to recognize where we are if we're in the wrong place, right? What does that bring up?
Bad feelings, sometimes
judgment, blame, right? We point the finger at other people when there's three pointing back at you. It's usually us, right? Shame, guilt. We all deal with these negative emotions. So therefore, it's easier to stay in denial rather than to really focus on the awareness of where we are and what we want to do.
Yeah, I think you're right. What do you want? That's hard, especially when we've been fed a lot of negativity over the course of our lives. Like, you'll never amount to anything.
Right.
You're not good at math. You're not good at XYZ.
Those are called negative beliefs. And we come into the world because I'm so fascinated with how the brain, or you could say the mind as well, operates. Because if you had let's say you had a computer sitting in front of you and it started to do wonky things, then you could immediately start ticking away at the keyboard and fix anything. Like you were just a computer genius. You could go, oh, I know how the software works. But when you could change it, you could update it, you could reprogram it. Wouldn't that be effective? Yes, of course. Well, wouldn't it be effective if we could do that with our brains? Which is no different. We come into this beautiful world with a blank hard drive. And the majority of the programs or habits or strategies, I call them mental recipes, that we come to learn up until 8 years old is downloaded onto our little hard drives by our primary caretakers. That's usually our parents. Could be a foster parent, could be your grandparents if you were raised by them. But they download these beliefs onto our little hard drive. Now, where do those beliefs come from? From their parents or their prime. And so it's genealogical that all this stuff is passed down through generations. And so we, as you were just saying, we grow up holding on to these beliefs. Now, up until 8 years old, we don't have the capacity in the brain, the mind, to say, that's not true. Think about it. If you were 5 years old and you looked up at your parents and go, oh, okay, so you're going to tell me that this big fat guy in a red suit jumps down the chimney every year and hits every single person on the planet, right? Is that the way it works, Mom? Right? No, you believe it all because we don't have the capacity to ask the question why. And that doesn't start developing till about 8 or 10 years old. It's called the theory of the mind. And around then you start asking questions. Although most of the programs have already been downloaded onto our little hard drive, and now we're operating from those presuppositions, those beliefs, those negative limitations. And so in psychology, we say this: people don't figure it out and probably till 30 or 40 years old, and they go, you know what? These strategies aren't working for me. I better look outside of myself for help, right? And that's when we start going, I don't know all the answers. I don't have all the answers. If I just tend to knock on somebody's door, ask God, or talk to a friend of mine that's successful and figure out what works for them, I'm still going to run the same programs. And that's really all it is. They're just negative programs that no longer serve us.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's not our fault that was
It's
input
not.
in.
It's not.
But at some point, you're saying the awareness of those negative beliefs might be a starting point to begin to shift your life.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that's really all it is, right? Again, the dichotomy in this is the awareness and then the denial, right? Both sides of that spectrum. Completely aware of what you're doing. Now, it doesn't matter if it's working or not. It's irrelevant. It's just that you're aware of it working or not. Or you can continue, as we say, you're operating like an ostrich with your head in the ground, just thinking that life is great and it's going to continue this way. And of course it doesn't, because life is all about change, right? And transformation. What do they say? The only consistent thing in life is change. And so the awareness part of that is huge. And that really is taking inventory of the results that you produce. The question that I ask my clients is simple. It's really simple. It's this: is it working for you? Is it working for you? That's all you have to ask. Is it working for you? My relationship. Okay, let's look at that. Is it working? Well, sometimes. Okay, that's good. Sometimes. You want to make it better? I'd love to. Great. There's some awareness. Next step is the action step. You look at your health. How are you feeling? Are you unhealthy? Are you diabetic? You got cancer. How's your stress and anxiety levels? Right? You look at your money situation. Are you struggling all the time? Do you find it challenging to go out and make money when there's an abundance of money on the planet? Right? So it's really asking those questions, getting in touch with really the results that you produce on a daily basis.
Okay, so once you've taken inventory of your results, then at some point there has to be a willingness to address and to change some of those things.
Yeah. It's not a willingness to change. That's the wrong focus, right? Because a willingness to change usually brings up pain, right? Oh, I gotta change. Oh, how am I gonna do that? So with neurolinguistic programming, NLP, we focus on, again, what do you want? What results do you want? That's where the willingness, you could say, to focus your attention is. Where do you want to be? Who do you want to become? Like the famous motivational speaker Zig Ziglar said, be, do, have. Become and have the things that you want. So the end goal, like I just asked this before, is if I'm your travel agent, where are we going? Where's the destination? Now, ultimately, what is God's gift to us, right? It's to enjoy our journey, enjoy the life that we have. I heard a great saying just recently, too. It was by the singer-songwriter James Taylor. You know who he is?
Yeah.
He said, what is success, right? Everybody has a different definition. Could be success about just being at peace with yourself or calm in your relationships with money, whatever that is to you. Success is enjoying the passage of time. That's all it is. That's why we're here. That's why we were given this gift, this amazing machine that we live in, this beautiful mind, is to enjoy the journey, enjoy the passage of time while we're here. And, there's obviously other things that contribute to that: giving back, community, gratitude, faith, all that. But enjoying the journey, right? How many people, my wife works at the hospital. She's one of the head respiratory therapists there. And she's the one that puts you on the ventilator. But also, you know what the crazy thing is, Julie? She's the one that has to pull the plug. When the family says, okay, he's in a coma, he's not going to wake up, or he's got 4-stage cancer, he's never going to recover, we're going to pull the plug. And she stands around with the family and prays with them. And they're crying, obviously, a lot of times. And I don't know how she does that. How do you stand around and watch this person just gasp their last breath? on this planet, right? That's huge. And nobody says, and you've heard this before, nobody says, God, I wish I would have worked a little bit more, right? I wish I
No,
would have made more money. It's always about, I wish I would have enjoyed my life more, given that joy and pleasure to the people around me that I love. That's what it is. Success is enjoying that passage of time. It's really simple, except we lose that focus, right? That's one of the chapters in the book is we take life for granted sometimes. We think we're going to wake up every morning and it's going to be another beautiful day. And sometimes it's not. It's hell on earth sometimes.
true. And so, I really love what you said, that success is enjoying the passage of time, because I'm not sure too many of us are actually doing that,
Oh,
but we
yeah.
want to do that. So,
Sure.
how can we get past the fear of doing things differently?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are operating from what we call the pain pleasure principle. We do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. We do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. And the unknown, which is usually what we want, because we don't have it yet, we don't know what it entails or what's going to come with that, is the unknown. And the unknown is a big black hole. And as Deepak Chopra says, its success lies in the opportunity of all the possibilities out there. All the possibilities out there. That's the unknown. And that unknown is very scary. And a lot of people don't want to take that step and open the door, not just open the door and look at it, but also then step through it, right? Take that next step. And so what we have to do is come back to the first step and say, okay, where am I now, right? If we do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure, I like asking my clients this: is it more painful where you are now or stepping into the unknown? And maybe there's blessings and success and wonderful relationships and money and wonderful health on the other side of that door, right? And most people go, yeah, I don't like where I'm at. But here's another saying. I love this saying. People don't change unless the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of the change. And
That's true.
what that means in a simple metaphor is people don't change until they hit rock bottom. And they realize, oh, there's so much pain here. Nothing could be worse. Nothing could be worse on the other side of that, the flip side of that coin. Maybe success or whatever that is, maybe it's just getting your life back together, is not as painful as where I'm at now. And that's really one of the tenets of AA, right? Is admitting that where you're at, the pain can't get any worse. Because most people at that point have already hit rock bottom and they're in the gutter, literally in the gutters, sleeping on the streets, drinking themselves, taking drugs to realize this is not working for me. And that awareness is huge. And so to make that step outside of that, you've got to recognize that. And I think that's everybody's first step. Even now, even when I work with millionaires and successful CEOs and athletes, it's like, great, you have all the success you want, but what's next for you, right? It's the same process. It doesn't matter where you start from. What's the process of getting? It's defining where you're at. If I was a great, let's say, athletic coach, and I was working with a high jumper. Okay, what are you doing that's right? What are you doing that's not working? And let's fix what's not working so you can better it. It's no different. It's taking baby steps. Like I was just talking to my sister about this a while back. I was in the fitness industry for 2 decades, and that's a challenge, I'll tell you. People come in and want to get healthy and fit and lose weight and feel better. And they always think it's going to be a huge process, right? Oh, I'm going to put you on a diet plan and you have to work out 6 days a week and you're going to... No, because most people won't stick to it. And the first thing I tell people is, hey, I don't care what you eat. All I care is you cut back 10%. Oh, really? I could do that. Yeah, you could do that because that's simple. And drink a little bit more water every day. And then we commit to a habit of doing it. And then we add on to that later on. No different than this. Right? You want to better your life? You're not making enough money? Okay, let's take baby steps. Let's look outside of yourself. Maybe you can create a second income stream. Or you want to get healthy, right? You want to better your relationship? You've got to talk. You've really got to communicate what it is that you want. And that's really what analytical psychology is about, right? Venting, emoting, getting rid of the negative emotions that hold us back.
I think those baby steps sound very doable for a lot of people rather than a huge overhaul, because like you, I work part-time in the fitness industry, and people thought I was going to kill them in the gym, that I was going to put them on a restrictive diet, that they wouldn't be able to move the next day. But I knew that if I did that, they wouldn't come back.
Right.
They wouldn't want to come back. because the consistency in the habit building
Yep.
is much more important than making huge changes
Yes.
at the beginning
Yes.
and building on that. And that kind of sounds to me like some atomic habits.
Yeah.
I don't know if
James
you've
Clear's
read that
book's a
book.
great book. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, the habit
that's
stacking.
really what is, because the brain is one of the things Tony Robbins says, success builds on success. I can drink another 16 ounces a day, 2 cups of water a day. Well, I can cut back 10%. That's simple. So that's success. It leaves clues. And they realize, wow, if I could do that, then I can take the next step and do a little bit more. I can start reading labels, right? I can start looking at what I'm actually putting into my mouth, and maybe I can drink more water, maybe go outside a little bit more, maybe take a walk around the block. Success leads you in the direction that you want to go, because success daily in these little things that's the key. That's the metaphor of learning what change really and transformation is all about.
So do you think that just that shift in thinking towards small baby steps is what actually can lead to someone transforming their life and overcoming these negative beliefs and the trauma that they've experienced?
Yeah. Yeah, they have to go hand in hand, right? The awareness of where they're at, what's working and what doesn't. And sometimes that takes a long time to figure out. They spend a lot of time in that pool, in that cesspool. Life, and they get and all this and the pain of that remaining the same. I've got to make a change. One of the things Tony Robbins says, once you decide, and that's the commitment right there, right? That's everything. When I was going through my internship as a clinical hypnotherapist, people would come in usually for one of two things: cigarette smoking and weight loss. And once they decide that they're going to stop, the rest of it's easy. We have the saying is, it takes 10 years to decide and only a moment to move in the direction that you want that you want. And so once they get there, like, oh, okay, now it's easy. You're looking forward. There's no fog, right? There's no fear anymore. You're like, it doesn't matter. I've already made the decision. I'm already there.
Yeah. No, that's so great. Just that decision. And decision could be today.
Oh,
It could be
absolutely.
tomorrow.
In a moment. In a moment.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
begin to shift and change your life. Now, I know in an earlier conversation that we had, you were talking about people becoming desensitized to trauma that they've experienced.
Yeah.
And I know in my own life, it's gotten to a point where I can talk about it and not
Right.
cry
Right.
or be upset and things like that. And I know a lot of people really want to get to a place of becoming desensitized to their trauma. Can you
Yeah.
share a few ideas of how they can begin to do that?
Yeah, that's a little bit more technical than what we do. I'll give you a little bit of background on what NLP really was derived from. These two gentlemen back in the early 70s had worked with three of the best therapists at the time in the world. Fritz Perls, he was a Gestalt therapist; Virginia Satir, she was a family therapist; and Milton Erickson, the foremost hypnotherapist at the time, who was teaching doctors how to use clinical hypnosis on his patients. Well, they formulated the basic tenets of change. What are every one of those clients doing to initiate change, right? And the first step was rapport. Every one of those therapists had gotten rapport with the client. Because, raise your hand, people, if you've ever gone to a therapist before. What's the one thing that you want in therapy? Is trust,
Yeah.
right? Is trust. When you walk in that room, you want to feel comfortable. You want to feel like you can open up. You can discuss what it is and not feel like you're being looked at under a microscope or ridiculed. And in order to communicate that, in order to vent, because that's really what we're doing, we're venting our emotions, because that's what the word emotions mean. Emote means to vent. And so in order to emote the process of what we're doing, you've got to be able to talk about it. Now, here's where I'm on the fence about transactional analysis, because by law, the therapist can't tell you what to do. They can't give you advice. And I don't believe that. That's why I steered my direction of my life in a different direction. I can't sit in a room for 8 hours with somebody and listen to them complain if they're not willing to do anything. I just can't do it. To me, it's like they're driving off a cliff and I have to say, how are you feeling?
How do you feel
How
about
you
that?
feeling? Are you okay? Yeah, life's good. Shouldn't they go off the cliff? No, I'm going to smack them upside the head and go, turn left, right? You're going off the cliff. So when I came across NLP, it was about processes. And what these two gentlemen looked at the process of change. And a lot of it, the most of it is what they found. I'll give you an example. In a massive phobia, let's say a phobia to elevators or snakes or airplanes or heights, whatever that is, every single person that they interviewed They didn't interview people that were going through the process. They interviewed people that had already rid themselves of the phobia at least for 5 years and found out how did they do it back then. And what they did was interesting. We call it disassociation. They disassociated themselves from the pictures, sounds, and feelings in their head. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, and this is why I said it gets a little deep. But everything that we think about in pictures, we think about with sound, and there's feelings generated from those pictures and sounds. So when people have a massive trauma or phobia or anxiety to something, they're making a picture in their head of it, and usually the picture's right here in front of them, and it's so big, they can't get out of the way. It's so big. And the feelings, where's that feeling? Right here in my chest, or it's located someplace in their body. When we can disassociate them from that picture and then the feeling, because here's what happens. There's an event. Usually we call it a setting event. Something that happened that caused that trauma. It just doesn't happen for no reason. There's something that happened. There's a setting event that happened. Now, it could be multiple setting events. What we do in neuro-linguistic programming is we separate the emotion from the event. So the event itself now, as we look at it, no longer has power. Because when we really think about it, emotions and feelings don't have any power. They don't. We give them power. We give that event power. When you strip away the emotion from the event, you can look at it now and it's a neutral event. Like you were just saying before. I can think about it, I can talk about it, I can discuss it, and it no longer bothers me. I'll give you an example. Can you remember 10 days ago brushing your teeth in the morning?
No.
Why? It happened, didn't it?
Yeah, it's a
It happened,
habit.
of course, right? The reason is because there was no emotion behind it. But if somebody called you right at that moment when you're brushing your teeth and said, Julie, you're never going to believe it. I took those numbers off that piece of paper. You just won the lottery. You would never forget that moment brushing your teeth.
Brushing my teeth would never look the same.
Or if somebody called and said, oh my God, you're never going to believe who just passed away, your best friend. Because there's an emotion attached to it, and the intensity of the emotion causes that trauma to be even greater in the back of our mind. So once we just detach it from that event, and so now it just becomes, hey, I'm brushing my teeth. That's the beginning.
So it sounds like you're taking an event that was traumatic and you're creating some space and some distance between the event and the setting, the location, the behavior, or whatnot. And so then you're able to look at it more objectively and sort of untangle your emotions from that.
And that's really all it is. We've all done that. We've all had, minor anxiety moments and things that bothered us at one time. And no longer, like you were just saying, that no longer I think about like that any longer. So those two gentlemen asked, how did they do that in their head? How did it happen naturally? Because everything that we teach in neuro-linguistic programming is something the brain is already doing. This is not artsy-fartsy stuff we make up. It's how your brain operates, how you already run your brain. So at one point, somebody that had a trauma that maybe did it by themselves, they go, yeah, I don't even think about that anymore. It doesn't even bother me when I think about it. Well, how did you do that? What do you mean, how do I do that? How did I do that? Right? That's the process. It's the process of how, not why, because why always brings up reasons and excuses. It's the process of how. That's the key.
Yeah, because we may never get answers to why.
No, you never.
We need the how.
If you were abused by your primary caretakers, whoever that was, you're never going to know why they did it. You can make up 1,000 different reasons why. Well, he was alcoholic, or he just had a lot of anger issues, or she did this. Like, okay, does that solve the problem? No, because the problem is yours, not theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can listeners begin to regain control over their lives and begin to create that compelling future? Do you have a few steps that you could just lay out?
I believe you have to face it. You got to face it, and you got to face it head on. You got to take it by the horns and go, okay, this is my life, and I'm not going to allow that moment in time, which could have happened 30 or 40 years ago, to control my destiny, control my path, control my faith in my life. You've got to take the bull by the horns. And a lot of people don't want to do that because, going back to what we were just talking about, it brings up too much pain.
Mm-hmm.
Even thinking about the event. Obviously, we're talking about trauma right now. For most people, it's usually not something that bad. It's just drama in their life or anxiety. You've got to deal with it head on. And then I think is find someone, doesn't have to be a therapist, that you can talk to about it, that will be empathetic. and maybe have some answers for you. But you've got to be willing to reach out. And so we talked about the first thing, awareness of the problem, right? Awareness is first, where am I at? Where do I want to go? And then I think, this is a great metaphor I use, I think our emotional life is like a volcano. There's always magma running underneath because that's what the earth is made of. That's what we're made of. We're spiritual beings here in this human body. And that spirit the emotions make up the spirit. We're an emotional being. And those emotions are constantly running underneath. Though what happens most of the time is people want to suppress those emotions. No, I'm going to deny it, right? I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to forget it. You can't forget it. And we keep suppressing it. But like a volcano, it's the same thing the earth does automatically, naturally. Eventually, what happens underneath? Pressure starts to build, and it builds, and it builds, and then pretty soon, and then it's too late, and it's too late, and there's too much chaos now. And fortunately, that raw emotion that comes bursting out isn't just a trickle. It's been years or maybe decades of suppressed emotional anxiety or stress that's been held down, and when it goes, it goes. And so using that metaphor is don't wait. Don't wait till it's too late. Emote. Talk to somebody. Go to group counseling. Just find a results coach, that's willing to listen and has answers. I mean, that's really what you want. You're looking for answers, right? Find somebody that's gone through the same thing you did. Ask them how they did it. That's the best source, right? We call it modeling. Model what works. How'd you learn to crawl? How'd you learn to walk as a child? You watched your parents do it. Maybe not crawl, but you watched them how to walk, right? You watch other people how to walk. You duplicate. You model that success. Well, it's the same thing. Whatever you want, find somebody that's already doing it. You want to lose 10 pounds? Go find somebody that's already lost it and kept it off for a long period of time. That's fit now. You want to find how to make money? Find somebody that's making money in the way that you want. You want to better your relationship? Don't go to your parents if they screwed up their relationship, right? Find somebody that has a wonderful relationship. Ask them how they do it now. Model what works.
That's great advice. Very great advice. So why do you feel that God wants people to have a bright and compelling future? And how can they partner with God in doing this? Because a lot of times it seems like psychology's over here and faith is over here. And I think we need a happy in between.
Some people believe, I don't care what faith it is. I'm a Christian, so I'll talk about that. You have Christians that believe God's going to handle all your problems. And all you have to do is sit back and wait. And one of my instructors says, I don't care how much you pray to God, he's not going to drop a bag of money in your lap. It ain't going to happen. Cute joke. This gentleman, every night, gets on his knees and he prays to God, Lord, please, just let me win the lotto. And I will never ask for anything again. The next night goes on again, week after week, day after day, he's doing this every day, twice a day. Lord, please, I'll never ask for another. After a couple of months, God comes down and says, look, meet me halfway. Buy a ticket.
Yeah, exactly.
Praying is wonderful and asking for guidance is wonderful, but you've got to take the necessary steps to move in that direction. And that's what people that are coming from a real desperate place think that God's going to just hand them the keys to the kingdom. And it just doesn't work like that. He'll show you the path, but you've got to walk it.
That reminds me of David. David was a shepherd boy and nobody thought much of him. He was just, out in the fields. But then he slayed lions, he slayed bears, and he had to learn how to wield that slingshot and those rocks.
Right.
And because he practiced and he did that, he was able to take down the giant Goliath. It wasn't just that, God's like, hey, I'm going to smote Goliath because you want him smote. I mean,
yeah,
he had to learn the skill.
That's, as you were just saying, that takes practice. That takes a knowledge and a practice. And that's what life is about. Show me somebody that's done anything the very first time and been excellent at it. It doesn't happen like that. It's called practice. And unfortunately, with practice, 99% of it is failure. Because you're not going to succeed for the first time, second, 10th, or 100th. What they've done studies like this. To become an expert in anything, it takes 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours. That's crazy. How many are willing to spend that much time learning and be good at something? Most people give up after probably 1,000. Most people probably wouldn't even go to 100.
Yeah. Well, it is a good investment of time if you're looking to improve your relationship
Absolutely.
and heal your mind and your heart and your soul
Yeah.
and or maybe get healthy in some way. So thank you for sharing those hours with us because it is
Yeah.
an investment
Yeah.
of our
It is.
time and
That's
our
all it is.
knowledge.
It's getting good at
Yeah.
it's getting good at something. That's all it is. Like we can fantasize in our brain all day long how wonderful life could be, but when you open your eyes, there it is, the life that you have, not the one that you want. And so in order to make that happen, you've got to make that dream a reality. And the only way you do it is by work. You got to get out and sling the hammer and dig the hole, just as a metaphor, right?
Yeah. And we can do that partnering with God.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite scripture today that can inspire and encourage people
Yeah.
who might be feeling stuck?
My favorite, and this one, like we were just talking about before, hit me emotionally so hard. It almost knocked me down. I was about 30 years old, and I was struggling in one of the relationships, and I was lost. And is that period, that 10 years, that period I was looking for my path in life. And she had taken me to a Christian church. So I was struggling, and I went to this church here in California. It's called Church on the Way. And there were thousands of people, thousands, with cameras everywhere. I'm like, this is not church. This is like a concert. This is weird. I didn't like it. But when I got home, something was tugging at me. And so I opened up the local newspaper and I saw this church called Calvary, literally around the corner from me. I went to that church and I got there late and everybody was inside. I'm in the lobby and I look up and I'm struggling at where I want to go with my life. Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you. I about fell over. I'm looking around going, did somebody just put that up there? No, there's no way. That's impossible that banner was there the whole time. They knew I was coming in here, right? That's how God works, right? When you're open, when your heart is open and you're open for answers, he puts them in front of you. Most of the time our eyes are closed and we don't see the opportunity, or rarely do we ever take it. You can see it, but you don't take it.
True.
And for me, I just almost fell to the floor. I'm like, I'm home. I know what I'm supposed to do now. This is it. And it was such a wonderful awakening for me. You know what I got out of that, Julie? I don't have to do it on my own. I want to ask for guidance. I want to ask for help. And if you're listening and your heart's open, your eyes are open, the answers are always in front of you. Always. Always.
I agree with you. Take the step of faith.
That's what it
God's
is.
there.
That's what it is. That's the key word, faith, right? That's the secret sauce.
Yes.
You got to have faith. He'll give you the steps. He'll show you the way. You've got to take a step. You've got to take one step, put one foot in front of the other, and go through the fear and the pain that path comes with. And most people aren't willing to do that because it's too hard.
It is hard, but the results on the other side,
Absolutely.
I cannot tell you the constant theme of people that I've interviewed.
Yep.
They've got joy, they've got peace,
Yep.
they've got purpose in their lives. And that's just something that you have to walk through the pain
Yes.
and the fear
Yeah.
to get to, but it
Yep.
is on the other side waiting.
And see, that's the path that nobody wants to take. That's the path of least resistance, right? Is going through it. Because if you try it another way, you're going to go around and you're never going to end up there. And so I think, and this is part of the beginning of my book, is being courageous, right? Is facing it head on and taking it, and regardless of what you're feeling now, knowing that the outcome, which I think is joy, peace, and happiness, is the end result.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us today and helping listeners create a compelling future. And if they want to do that with you, with your books, or with you as their coach,
Yeah.
how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, real easy. If you're watching, go to the website that's on the wall behind me. It's LA, because I live in Los Angeles, LANLP.com, 5 letters. And I have a free mini course. It's 7 simple lessons. And as we were talking about before, it starts out simple things like taking control of your language, because as we speak, so shall we become, right? So we're formulating these thoughts and we speak this language. If you start to really formulate empowering dialogue, it's also changing the beliefs and also changing the people outside of you, helping people outside of you. And that's one of the exercises. And there's an audio lesson with each one as well. And so you get 7 lessons over a period of like 14 days. And it'll really change the way that you look at life in general. And then if you want to take it to the next level and you want to do some coaching with me, I'll give you a 30-minute coaching session. Anyone that calls and says, "Hey, John, I loved what you were saying. Can you work with me for 30 minutes?" I'm like, absolutely, of course. And it becomes a fun process. It really is. I make it fun.
That's what a great opportunity. So if you're listening and you want to take advantage of his mini course or his 30-minute coaching call that's free, get a hold of him at that LANLP website. So thank you once again. Today we've had John James Santangelo, PhD. We are so thankful you were here. God bless you and your ministry and your work.
Thank you, sweetie. Appreciate it, Julie.
Thanks for joining me. I hope this episode has blessed you. If so, please subscribe, comment, and share. It's a great way to spread the love and keep good content rolling. As a reminder, this podcast is purely for informational and educational purposes only. Listening to content is not a replacement for medical or mental health care. Please make decisions with your personal care providers. Stay tuned for next week's episode. But if you want more content or free resources in the meantime, head over to FromBudToBloom.com. See you next time. Until then, live fully free in Christ.